Hi, Tracy.
Welcome. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining us.
So I spoke with them briefly about some of the key items that we should talk about today. One of them is the new personnel, since we're looking for 2 new people in the building department. We did, remember, I talked about the one half a person that was in the planning department that we switched over to be the full-time, but that's not really a new position, it was planned to be there. And then the GIS technician. So there's, I think, a lot of benefit to having the GIS technician, and Tracy can speak to that.
Still full-time, right?
It's full-time, right. So that person would be not just planning office, but would serve the whole village. And there's a lot of benefit to that. And then Joe's been working very hard on reorganizing and getting all of the, oh, and I forgot the stats. I'll go up and get those stats real quick. Of exactly all of the things that we are required to do as a community, as far as inspections and how much time that takes and the number of people and why we're asking for someone new and an administrative person to do the additional work that the board has asked us to do with vacant property registrations and all of that, because it's a massive undertaking. So, Tracy, welcome to your first budget meeting. And again, you know, I think that the budgets themselves are pretty much the same as they were, except for the personnel. And then I don't think you have any equipment in there. Oh, we have cars for you. We have cars. So if you just want to share a little bit about your initiatives for this year, Tracy, we'll just start with you and talk about the comprehensive plan, because that's something that's really, really important to this board.
Sure. Next year, we hope to embark on a comprehensive plan update. Is this not on? Just want it closer to me. And I think once we do need this GIS person as part of that update to really get a good evaluation of where we are today. And from that hopefully there's been a lot of good work done that we can use that as a foundation for doing the comprehensive plan update. And that'll be a huge initiative next year. It won't be completed next year. Comprehensive plan does take longer than that. But we hope that the work that has been done in the last few years can be a really good foundation for the comprehensive plan process. But some of the information, the update will be really important. The current comprehensive plan, the 2009 comprehensive plan, uses data from 2000 for census data. So we really want to update all this information, and this is where the GIS person will be integral in doing this work. It is better, in my opinion, to do this work in-house. I used to do this type of work for the county for base studies, and it allows us to, we know the information, the village knows the information better than a consultant does. So for us to really evaluate our existing conditions is something we'd be much more adept at. So that's one of the big initiatives. Another initiative that I have been working on is reviewing the zoning board and actually all the land use review process. We would like to automate this process better and to minimize our work. Some of that's even as simple as updating the applications to make them more intuitive, easier to follow, and also provide us with more information up front so that we're not guessing about or trying to figure out really what they want to do. The first step is just improving those applications. I think this also gets more into the office automations. Once again, with the GIS system, on the programs that come with that would be beneficial to making our operations move smoother. So those are some of the larger things that I am currently working on for next year.
So
It's
this,
just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
this GIS person
Yes.
is going to be working between your department and the building department?
I think, well, GIS, if we do a corporate GIS, it really would probably impact many departments. It would actually be an umbrella. They, you know, you would do from everything from managing where probably our parking meters are, and helping with code enforcement issues. Would also deal with, you know, our parking permits. This is something that would touch almost all parts of operations of another way so that we can visually organize our information and data.
So I'm excited about this because when it comes to GIS, I know that it can offer a lot of information. In your experience, does the county have a person like this, or local municipalities in the area have they used a person or personnel like this?
Absolutely. One of my main, actually my whole career has been in GIS. I actually am a GIS user and highly skilled at it. We're looking at someone who actually is probably would be better at the infrastructure and the corporate end of GIS. I can actually produce maps. I've already started. We actually have GIS back in the planning department. I'm starting to gather the data information. I've been working with the tax assessor to get the updated land use information and starting to build a data set so that we can start working on our comprehensive plan, getting updated census data, all these new data layers that we'll have. So that we can move forward. This person will be help even for things out in the field for taking information and data. If someone's out in code enforcement, that they can geolocate exactly where they are and pull up records. You know, it's that coordinated from the mapping perspective. But I have done this. I was one of the last people, sadly, at the Department of Planning of Westchester County who was highly skilled in GIS, but they have a full department. There are other municipalities that have GIS staff. I know the town of Yorktown has someone who specializes in GIS. Many municipalities all have some levels of GIS.
Okay. And they have this integral role between different departments as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and then the county, you know, even the district attorney, they have their own GIS department, and they actually can use it for where they can actually use it to help crime fighting when you can do map hotspots of where certain crimes are happening. So there's a whole law enforcement end of GIS that can be used doing heat map type things. But we can also do it to help manage our stormwater. I know the highway department is like, when are you getting GIS? You know, they would love to be able to know, like, when there's a spill and it's coming out of, you know, a storm drain, where did it come from? And we can help track where these things are. So getting our infrastructure as a part of this is important. I know the engineering DPW really want this system. It'll help us with, I mean, infrastructure is really important, and knowing where all your wastewater, your sewer lines are, stormwater, even in our water supply system. So we can really have all that mapped underground. You'd be surprised that it's not all mapped underground. And that just knowing where all the shut-off valves are, it's important for emergency. That if you have to, like, if there's a water main break, where is that? And with GIS system, with a handheld out in the field, they can actually find it quicker and access that information.
So tell me about this position. I mean, we're not really adding a position to your department because it's just a different intended job title and function than had previously been identified in your in fact, I'm not even sure if, was it just 2 full-time positions and then an admin that was already in your department?
Correct.
So, so that's not much of a budgetary consideration. It's just a functional consideration.
Right. I think before it was an assistant planner,
Yeah.
did planning. I think they worked on the boards and land use boards. You know, I'll probably be taking a larger role in
Yeah,
that.
nobody's had that position since
Right.
James Rather
Right.
5 years ago or whatever. But we had it in the budget for this
Yes.
year, and that didn't materialize. So, but this job description exists, it sounds like, in the county. Where are we with being able to hire somebody for this position? Because I know we've had.
It's being scored at the county at this point, and then they'll be giving it a title. And as soon as they establish the position, then we'll be able to hire.
The position, but does this job description exist elsewhere?
No, well, no.
Well, the county has their own job descriptions from the local municipality. They do have these positions at the county, but you have to
I know,
create it
okay,
at the
but-
local level.
And sometimes you look at the job description, you see this job exists in, you know,
Yorktown.
in this town, in this village. But you just told us about a GIS person that is in Yorktown and these other places, so why aren't we just adding "and the village of Ossining"?
Because they won't let us do that. The county's process is to make sure that we fill out the LJ3 and we say exactly what they're going to be doing in our municipality so that they can verify the title.
Some are different. They have other tasks with the municipalities. Other
Right. Yeah, the one in Yorktown, she does some other planning duties up there.
And you don't expect that this person's going to do any other planning duties?
I would expect that they would do some I mean,
It'll just
there'll
say
be a-
as directed at the end of their job description, right?
Right. They will, I'm sure they'll be helping out on the comprehensive plan and those type of things as the GIS integrates into that.
So they're going to be doing comprehensive plan, planning, building department, stormwater management. They're going to be doing all those things?
Well, no,
They would
the
be ma-
GIS is
no,
doing
they
that.
would, they would
The
be
person is
managing the framework
The
in
framework.
which those other things operate. They would be
GIS is software.
facilitating better management for those operations using GIS.
I mean, you're going to be drafting it, but I see this person as employee that works in the planning department that specializes professionally in GIS, and that will be facilitating GIS throughout other departments, but we'll mainly be focusing on miscellaneous and as directed work and planning. Right? I mean,
Yes,
yeah.
there are titles, well, actually, one of my positions at the county was Associate Planner dash GIS. That doesn't exist
you wanna,
at
like-
the local, so there are these different things where there are these combinations, but it might be that's what we end up with as a title, but the county has to, the civil service will
So tell
go
us,
through the process.
because I feel like we've banged our head up against the wall a lot with hiring challenges in the last year and a half, and I'd like to stop banging our head against the wall, or at least know how long we're gonna be banging it before this happens. So where are we in the process? If we approve this in the budget on December 5th, is that, like, on December 6th, do you send your job description into the county, and then what
No,
happens?
that's already been done. The job description's gone to the county. It's in their hands now to come back with a title that they will allow us to use, and then they will determine whether it's competitive or non-competitive. And then they will determine if, in fact, if it's competitive, if there's already an existing list. And so if there is no list, then we can go through the process of trying to hire someone. But I'm not really, we've gone so far with this now that I'm not expecting that to take much longer. We should have the title, I mean, we can talk to Tanya when she comes in about where they are in the process, because she's the one that's managing that, as far as getting the title and all of that set. Because we would really like to get this person on as quickly as possible.
That's the soon.
But it's in process. But it's county civil service. But again, I think that because we had our meeting with them, that there's a much better understanding of our needs and what they need. And so we're doing the process that they need to get what we need. And we're getting there. It's not gonna be 6 months. It'll be 2 months.
Okay, there we go, we got
2
it.
months.
2 months.
Write it down.
2 months.
Let me speak into the mic. 2 months.
You're hoping, because you don't control it.
I don't.
Right.
But once
Yeah.
the title's established and the determination if it's competitive and there's a list, that's what takes the longest part.
So, okay.
I would like to have this done as soon as possible. We
Yeah,
could really use the assistance in the office. Staff of one, although I have probably the best administrative assistant. She's wonderful. There's only two of us.
Yeah. I can say that Paul and Andy are very excited about having a GIS person, as is Joe and the chief. And, you know, as we talked about, Tracy's already started to map where are our on-street parking and where is this and where's that. So just having that data and that analysis is going to really help us make decisions and bring those items to this board for discussion. So I think the value there is, I'm equally as passionate about that as I was the VACCOM machine. I mean, it's just going to really put us light years ahead, so.
So my question is this GIS person would be your direct, like they would report to
Yeah.
you?
Yes.
Okay, so it wouldn't be assistant planner, but it would be that
Correct,
position.
it would be a different position.
And then you would coordinate how that person works between
Everybody.
the departments?
Yes, yes. And because I have extensive knowledge in GIS, we'll be able to work really well together.
My macro issue is that I'm hearing a lot of words and I'm seeing org charts, and I still don't have a sense of what you do every day. I have yet to actually see a product that tells me from a consumer point of view how this plays out. So all of this is great, but the only purpose for this is to make the lives of our residents better. And I have yet to see an actual product that does that. So there's lots of talk, and there's lots of we're working, and we're mapping, and we're looking at infrastructure, which is what a municipality does. But these presentations, while they're about budgets, don't bring that to the forefront. They're very general. There's no detail in this. There's no product being delivered. And we go through these budgets, and we move boxes around to suit a civil service environment, which I understand, but it's not a human interaction, okay? Like, I go to meetings and tell people what I do every month. A lot of people. And I walk in with, this is what I do, and this is the purpose. And at the end of the day, there are human beings that benefit from that purpose. learning more about how our water navigates underground, while I think is phenomenal and may help our engineers, I need to have a connection in these conversations, all our conversation, where it hits our residents. How this affects people's lives, why it's important to them, and that connection is not there for me. It may be for everybody else. And I think it's really cool to do analysis. Spent my lifetime doing it. It's only important to me, representing the public, for what it does for the public. And how, and that connection in these presentations are not yet being made in this particular environment. I got it from the police and why it affects people in a certain way. I get the parking. I definitely understand that it will help the humans that pay taxes and live in our environment and come to work here and come to eat here and all that. I'm having a real hard time, even from the get-go. The conversations are very general. There's still a missing connection. I'm not expecting it this minute, but I need to start seeing, me, not speaking for the board, I need to start seeing a connection with what this does for the human beings that live in our community. And that is missing so far. Today, in the budget lines, in org charts, it's like not there yet. I think you guys need to work on this more. And I also think we need an update from this department, both Joe and Tracy, more often. This is the singular, for me, as a representative of the public, the biggest problem area in our community, the way I represent this community. And it affects way too many people now on so many levels. So we can keep building infrastructure and knowing more, but I'm getting a little bit irritated sitting in budget meetings. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. But really, I'm looking at you, which is why I need a connector here.
Sure.
I don't know if we need a separate meeting about this
We
department.
do.
I need a connector, because it ain't working. Not the department. The connection is not working for me. But the others are. I mean, I think some of the other departments, I'm feeling like we didn't have that last year. Like, there's been a lot of improvement of those connections. You know, I'm not interested in 100 studies. I'm interested in where that affects people. And
I hear
I'm
ya.
very uncomfortable paying for yet one more full-time person without understanding that.
Sure. I think that would,
I know Quantel's really excited, but I think he's gonna agree, because we usually agree on this.
Yeah.
I need
Well,
to
no, we-
understand what it does, who they report to,
right.
and I'm happy that our engineers are thrilled. Who cares? I want to understand what it does for the residents. Why why hiring yet one more person is gonna make their lives better? Tell me that story, and I'm all ears.
I mean, we had the same conversation last year,
Thank you.
but particularly, you know, with the assistant planner. And the reason I'm asking so many questions is because, particularly with the planning and the building department, and this predates you and even you, we
Yeah.
every year we come up with this new, like, oh, we're gonna do this and we're gonna solve this issue. And so
Yep.
the reason I'm asking who's gonna be the director of report is because it sounds great, but if the person's going to be working with you and they're going to be doing primary planning, but then they're going to be over here with the building department, but then they're also going to be doing the park. Like, when we
I hear what you're
add
saying.
another employee, like, we just want to know what they're doing. So, it doesn't have to be right now, but that job description that you have, that would be helpful because that can help us connect the pieces.
Sure. So if you look at any planning document, there's a lot of maps in there, a lot of things that are you know, data that's on there. When we wrote our grants, the maps that went in there, that was all GIS technology. And just the Cliff Note version of what this person does for the customer is that when we have a water main break and we have the data that knows where the switches are that are on and off and how do we get in there, and we connect in that respect. There's also roadway mapping, so everybody drives on a road. And being able to use this person to map out those roads and we intertwine all of the different layers that GIS can, all right. You're looking at me like I have 6 heads, so.
No, I'm not, but it's a budget conversation. We want to hire a person, it's going to help our engineers and all that. It doesn't fit with the rest of, we have an issue with the building department and planning, and we hired people for economic development and all that, so I need,
Right.
it doesn't have to happen today, but
Okay,
There's a deficiency in the presentation in that Quantel said it beautifully, honestly. It's like different boxes, same story.
Well, listen,
I'm
let me,
appreciative, but the connection needs to be, I'd like to understand how it all fits together.
Sure.
Why
I,
hire another person? I
I-
hate hiring more staff.
I got to tell you, you know, I've been sitting here longer than anybody else, and
Yep.
I mean, Trustee Casada talked about this when when his first term, he talked about GIS.
Yep.
And he talked about how we've got all this information and we can't get to it. Okay, and we've already heard a multiplicity of different ways in which this individual brought in and properly supervised would support multiple departments with real-time data that would help us. You want to know how it's going to help people? It's going to help emergencies. When they have water main breaks, something's going to be able to get identified and done rather than us searching around with a flashlight trying to figure out where the water main is to be turned off. So this is really simple stuff. I understand you know you have a problem with it and it's not articulated the way you want, but this is easy.
It's also
This is
not economic
Can I finish,
development.
please? Can I finish?
Go ahead.
Okay. You know, part of my frustration sometimes is that you know we finally have strong, experienced professionals in positions that have, you know, years of experience of understanding of how things need to work. We have a professional manager, we have a professional planner, you know, and you know, for everybody to think that out of the box, we're going to have the vision and the plan and it's all going to be explained. These things do take time, and we all know the glacial pace of municipal government, you know. We know the glacial pace of a county that you know, continues to, you know, tail wagging the dog to figure out how we can hire somebody. I mean, it's the definition of insanity. So you know, I understand your point, and I think it's important that this all be articulated to the public. But you know, we can talk about all this now, but I think this is a great hire. I think this is really important to the village for now and for the future and for all the things, for so many of the things that we want to do, you know, as a government. So I'll just leave it at that.
Just a suggestion going forward. Am I on? I'm on, right? Until we had that future conversation that we'll have later, as stated, could just follow what's written here. I mean, not read it, but like, you know, the purpose and the proposed changes and why and the accomplishments thus far and the goals. I mean, it's already laid out here. Maybe it's just not being articulated in a way the public can understand or really buy into it. And maybe for us to, as we go back to our constituents, be able to firmly say that. I mean, but I do see it here. Maybe it's not being said that way, I agree, but I do see it in the proposed public budget that was released. So,
I'm not going back and forth with this. I think I already said, I mean, this is not an argument. I've made my point. Everybody else has made their point. I think this needs more conversation. I don't think the budget meeting is where you need. I mean, I think we need to move on, otherwise it's another 2-hour meeting, right? So I've sort of said what I have to.
Yes, yes. Sorry. So I agree with John to what he said. A couple years back, I thought it was something important for us to get updated information in regards to not just the GIS, but different areas within the planning department, building department. And I was in a meeting last year. Joe was there, Stuart Kahan was there, and Fernando was there, because and probably Tracy knows more than me because she did work in the county. But we did have a conversation where we had a conversation with the persons in charge of the GIS, because the town has a GIS system. So we were trying to work with the town to help us update some of the stuff that we have. So to me, going overall, and again, I don't want to keep talking about, you know, this charge and personnel and had this whole fits in here, but, you know, it seems like even though I agree with you, John, 100%, I just don't see that person being a full-time. I think seem more like a project. You know, like this is your task. You do this for 6 months or 9 months. We update this and we move on to the next topic. So having a full-time GIS, again, I'm not If we can avoid doing that and work with what we have here in this home building, again, it's just talk to Fernando. We have the GIS system. We have that technology. So again, it goes to repetitive stuff that we are trying to use, that we are paying for something that we should not be doing it. So, again, you guys talk about yourselves later on and how that works. But again, I don't want to pay for something that we could partner up with our own municipality here with next door and make it work. So
Actually, the town doesn't have a real operating GIS system. They have
they
they have a
don't.
corporation that actually
Yes.
provides mapping
Correct.
online.
It's a
and
service, right?
It's a
It's a
service.
service. Again, so it's a
There's a big
service, yes.
difference with
Yeah.
a corporate GIS. It's a way that you manage your information in your files, and it's something that's always evolving. A temporary person, that would be working on that, they could maybe get you set up, but then there's the constant maintenance of the information and the data. And I will say that this is not a 6 month project to get this going. You're talking about data information that'll be getting contracts, looking for grants to convert this information, looking for data sharing. This is a lot of information, and it is a big time saver. It is a matter of, when there's an oil leak because something busted and it's down your storm system, that oil leaking for 5 minutes versus an hour can cause a lot of damage, and that's part of the why you don't want someone having to go back to the building department to go rummage through the maps. If you have something right on hand on a computer, on a laptop, they can actually get to things and shut things off quicker and know where things are coming from. I've seen this happen where actually I live, where someone was filling an apartment with heating oil and they didn't pay attention and it overflowed, and that heating oil just started going down the storm drain. Luckily, I knew enough about it where that could be coming from, and I saw this, and I contacted, the Westchester Police acted very quick and solved that. But every minute, that's flowing down the Bronx River, that's flowing down something and causing significant environmental damage. So knowing where these things are, whether it's a pipe leak, if it's a sewer leak, whatever these things are, being able to know where infrastructure is extremely important. And this is not going to be, these are different projects into themselves to convert this information. Even right now, I've started converting the information for the land use information and starting to look at what are our non-conforming uses in zoning districts. Looking at the T district right down on Spring Street and how many properties are non-conforming. These are important things that we need to know when we're evaluating. 30% of the properties are multifamily in a T zone, so those are all non-conforming properties. And actually, only 30% was single family in this one district, and 30% was two family. So is that district really reflective of what it is? We need to start looking at this information from an economic development standpoint. If we don't deal with all these non-conforming properties that are isolated or maybe in the districts that they don't belong, we need to evaluate those properties within those districts and the regulations that are imposed upon them if you really want to have good economic development. So it's complex. It's a lot of wonkish stuff about GIS, but this is a big job, and the corporate end and then the data end, they're two different things.
I think this is something that there might be another conversation about, and a lot's been laid out on the table here. Because we're going to have such a focus on comprehensive planning in the next year, I understand the importance of having this skill set brought in, as well as just giving support to your department, because it's great that you know how to do this, but we need you to be doing other higher level things. I remain a little concerned about how this process with the county is going to go, just because we haven't had a lot of success, so hopefully we've turned a corner. I didn't see the job description that you sent in. I'd be interested in seeing that. Usually when you write these job descriptions, it ends with, or as directed by the so-and-so. And as long as it says that, then this job can evolve. Next year, it'll be a big focus on comp planning for the next couple of years. But going forward, there'll be other initiatives that we're going to want, and they'll have gotten the system to a certain level where I assume that this position, as whatever the secondary person is, as a planning professional of some description, will be able to be supportive of whatever the focus is for the planning department going forward, right?
Right. Whatever the initiatives of planning, or whether it's a census update or doing a housing study, they could provide those services and save money.
But beyond just
Right.
GIS mapping. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's data analysis, but there's a lot that your department does beyond what Jamie Kane does and beyond what we want the head of the department to be doing. So I hope that this job description has enough flexibility to
Yeah, I would want
evolve
them
with
to be
the
able to write
Yeah.
grants, and things to
Right.
get.
Yeah, that it's
funding
mainly not
and-
GIS,
And,
that's
and,
part of
and
it.
deal with
That's- yeah.
contracts and do all that as well.
Excellent. Okay, that's what I wanted to
So will you be? Are you familiar with ERSI? ERSI? Esri?
Esri, yes, yes.
Okay, so we're members now, so is that what this person?
We actually have that software right now.
Okay.
We already got it in our budget this year and got updated that, and it's installed on my desktop
Okay.
right now, so we can start doing mapping. As I said, we already started mapping the parking permits and looking where they are, and I'm starting to map where the parking regulations. And it makes a big difference where you're looking at the regulations, where they are, what they are on the books and what they are in the streets. And it's hard to really tell that without a map or having some programs to know that. And that's really starting to come to life.
And will this person that we're talking about, is that going to be like their main?
Yes, they would be able to do all that type of work. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. If you guys, if, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Esri, but if you go to the website, different municipalities use it in very comprehensive ways.
The county uses.
Yeah, whether it's economic strategy, whether it is law enforcement or different other things. I just want to let you know, like, I hope you don't feel that our questions are
No.
like, we're not questioning you to doubt
Yeah.
your skill level and what we
Right.
believe that you can do. We just
There's a lot of this we'll also be able to do for economic development is do even with the program that we have right now, you can do 3D visualizations and understand like new development for our planning board. They'll be able to visualize better. You can start asking for that information. Portchester actually passed a law that requires having the plans come in so they can be integrated with the GIS so that you can actually bring it almost into like Google Earth and you can see, oh, that's what it'll look like on the street. And we can start looking at that. We can start evaluating, even if you want to go into form-based code, it's great to have the 3D visualization that we can have through using the ESRI software. It's ArcMap and ArcGIS.
Okay.
Other things to talk about in planning, or should we move on to building?
And move on to, well, it's up to you.
Well, I mean, you tell me whether, the staff was a big difference. I assume we've acknowledged one of your big focuses this year is going to be the comprehensive plan, and
Right.
you've given us some starting point conversations. That is another conversation we will have again and again and again and again about what we're going to do with establishing the community engagement is really the first line of action there, and establishing a committee to help guide that. And so do you have an idea? Is that a January 1 type of conversation? Go ahead.
No, I just have one question.
Oh, sure.
The parking study is still carried over from 2018. So based on the conversations that we had earlier with the chief and the kind of in-house thing, are we doing a parking study? Are you guys handling that? Like,
So that's a really good question. We rolled the money over because we know that we don't have enough money in the comprehensive plan line item. And because parking is an integral part of that could be used a little bit on the new update for the comprehensive plan.
okay, all right.
Well,
There's
we
a
also
lot
have to pay
behind
for the parking infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's a
Right.
capital.
That's a capital.
That's a capital.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was the philosophy, is parking is part of that. There's also an economic development line in here, and again, that's part of the comprehensive plan if we really want it to become comprehensive. And then we could use those monies to supplement the 150 that we set aside last year.
Okay.
Right, and after we get through the base studies, we'll be able to do some targeted studies and really know where we want to do further analysis, and I know parking will definitely be a big one. That's why we already started compiling the data for that. But parking is a huge issue for,
We may want to rename it.
Okay, sure.
And just, basically, we have $250,000 that is comprehensive plan related, between comprehensive plan, it precisely says that, economic development and parking.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Take it more
So
specific.
just say this, we can say comprehensive planning and just put the $250,000 there, and then we can specify within that, or you can break it out more if you want to, and we just know that it's going to fluctuate. But
right.
I don't have a preference, but.
Also, if the stuff
Right,
is
good idea.
materially effective for other departments, we should be allocating budgets accordingly. So if it helps something do with police, whether it's data research or analysis, there's, I think, some elasticity there.
Sure.
To think about allocations of funds, so it's more fairly allocated
Sure.
in the appropriate places.
Yeah, that's a good
It's
idea,
a
too.
multi-use.
So we really weren't sure how much the other departments would use it in the beginning stages, because we really did feel like this was a good position for the comprehensive plan update. But once we got a better sense, we talked with Tom and Dale about allocating for next year's budget, like how much each department's
Yeah,
actually using.
so it's a work in progress. The problem is that the budgets are being asked a year in advance, so we have
Right.
to,
We have no experience, so.
And just my last question about interns. This is just a general question. When we're doing interns, how are we advertising? Like, how are we getting that information out there? Because there's a budget line for this, so.
Yeah. So we wanted to do what all of you have been suggesting, is put out a news release that say, hey, the village next summer is going to be looking for interns, send them, put it on our web blast, put it out on our website, but also send it to some of the schools that we know have the students that are training to do the things that we would want. So you'll see a much better effort.
There's a really good pool. New York Metro, American Planning Association chapter, that's a great place to advertise. I actually know there's an intern working with the Sing Sing Prison Museum. The young gentleman is extremely professional. He's actually a high school student. I shared with this paper that he's actually submitting for the Regeneron Science Competition, and he did this whole GIS paper on the impacts of zoning and graffiti in New York City. It was so impressive. I shared it with people. So this is a real homegrown little young planner that I actually kind of think
awesome.
Somehow I want to fold him in. He either wants to participate in the conference plan. So I would look here, and I think I might have already found someone who might be a really great candidate. He's a high school student here.
Great.
And that would be great. And
like that.
he wants to get a degree in planning. So,
Okay, all right.
But we will do a.
but we will advertise.
That's the only position we want to hire at Enter
yeah.
There are interns that are unpaid, right? So if it's a part of a school, they don't pay, right? You either
Correct.
get credit or you get paid, right? That's the way it works. And then there are stipend. So when I put my initial, you asked all of us to give
Yep,
you,
and it's in here.
right? So when I send mine in, I actually put in for stipend because I think when I talked to Catherine Borgia, there's a lot of, they're interns, but they're really stipends, $1,000. And they're very specific. There's a beginning, middle, and end, which I think also works well. But we also have a lot of local college students. I mean, there's a number of universities, New York City ones, so let's really put
Right.
it out there.
Yep. And
That'll be
thank you
great.
for
This is
putting
a
that in
great
there.
project.
It's in the board budget, but.
No, I mean,
Your
you asked the
initiatives.
sports, so
Yeah.
you asked, you received. So it'll be great, but when we talk internships, I think we have to do high school, college, like we have, when people hear it, they got it.
Right.
There's a real difference in whether they're stipend projects. These would be great, actually, projects as well for
Oh,
college
yeah.
kids during their winter break, or because there's a real
Mm-hmm.
finite set of needs.
Right.
And while it's a very small nominal amount compared to the budget, I see that we have annual maintenance for annual municity. So again, we're paying a licensing fee. Is it? Are you working with municity well, or right here,
Are you on the right,
9/11?
With Municity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still evaluating Municity, and, so is Joe.
That's Joe. Okay.
I don't really know that I'm really in a position to comment on it fully. I know they have different versions of Municity that tie in better with the GIS system. We don't have that version. There's a cloud-based version. I really haven't worked with it enough to,
Okay.
I mean, I've gotten into it. Joe probably has a much better comment on Municity.
Well, I mean, that goes back to what we said earlier. That's even more of a reason. We asked earlier that we should get a comparison as to what softwares we have, what are working based off of our department heads and manager, which ones are either being duplicated or not effective, which services we're getting or we're not.
Yeah.
So that kind of just affirms what we said earlier. So thank you.
Yeah, and-
everybody that comes in here, there's a certain theme. People,
Yeah.
request.
Right.
Yeah, and the technology, and you learn that everybody's sort of using sort of same thing, sort of different things.
Some of it's data in, data out, and I think if we bring in data in a different form, it might be easier. Right now, everything's handwritten for the most part, and to be able to maybe automate things would make it,
Yep.
to fill that Municity software fields better if it was done kind of automatically.
Right.
So I haven't spent enough time looking at that to really comment.
Did you get your intern?
Yeah.
But there is an initiative between the two departments. So they've been coding their projects differently, and we really ought to, they're talking about how they can code it the same so the information is tied to an address, as opposed to just a client number or something else. So that way, when you look up something by is that? am I
It's
saying
actually
this
really
right?
my department, that is, everything
both
from zoning.
departments.
Yeah, is that we have for the property files, but all the planning board files are done by case number. So this is actually a large, probably intern project or something, is that, so if you look back, you have to go back PB, 03-19. This never tied to the property address, so it's really hard to do comparisons of knowing like what was done in the past. But unfortunately, the zoning is actually put in the property files so that you can actually look up the SBL files. And at least if it was tied to SBL, which will be really great from attaching it to the GIS system.
SBL.
Yeah, the SBL. Oh, section block and lot.
Okay.
It's the tax lot number. Every property has a 20-digit code and actually has a printout code. And that's how all the GIS system is managed, usually is by the SBLs. And the state has now converted to this big 20-digit code. So yes, that is a big project, and so that we can understand, part of it's also just to know that what's been done in the past. So if you've granted a site plan approval for here, that you know that it's consistent, that knowing when you're reviewing a new one. And it's really it's very difficult and time intensive if I was to look up what was all the site plan approvals on that block. It would probably take me a week to figure that out. So we want to convert that to an address-based file or a section block and lot. Probably we'll go with the RPS file, which can tie immediately to the address.
Because the building department files are already organized in that manner. It's the
Correct.
planning board cases that should be tied to them.
Yes, and then I have just drawers of Hidden Cove, or I have, so there's just lots of files. We need to fix that and put it in the address space, but it's going to be, those files are already jam-packed to put ours in there, and it's also going through the culling operation of maintaining only what we need to maintain.
Won't it also be largely electronic?
Yeah.
Because the building department files just all got scanned in.
Yes.
Right.
We could scan them in. At least we have to go through, some things you do have to keep permanent according to records retention, especially planning and zoning board and property files. They are permanent, so we do keep hard copies. But there are some that we can probably thin them down, extra copies. We have to go through the retention schedule, which we started to do, is having meetings with New York State Records and Archives. And there are some grants for that.
I was going to say, there are a lot of grants for stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, and that's what I'd probably have, this GIS person could be a grant writer for this records retention. It all kind of goes in the same category, is that they could manage these type of grants, doing the user needs assessment, which would have to be done to really qualify for grants from New York State for GIS. There's a GIS user needs assessment that needs to be done first. So that would probably be one of the first things that we do, is doing a GIS user needs assessment where they work with each department. What are your operations? And then they figure out, well, this would help your operations if we converted this to the GIS system. So that's the first thing that would be done, and then we can look for funding for that. And this would be one of them.
That's one of the things that Victoria Caffarelli was mentioning about state archives and the grant. So we want to do a joint grant with the town because we do have a lot of records that need to be managed. And as we do the operations center and we transfer all of our records that are in storage into one location, we want to work together with the town. And that was one of the grants that we talked about getting this year.
Yeah, but this sounds like it's just, like, these grants are sometimes very specific. This sounds like
They're
it
very
could be its
specific.
own project, and there's no reason
Separate,
to
yeah.
not get started on that, because that's like,
Absolutely.
like,
I mean,
everything in your office is
Yeah.
not coordinated the way it should be. so let's do
everything,
that.
all those type of grants, every time you do something, you'd probably do components of a GI system, like you do your water infrastructure, you do your stormwater, they're components, pieces that you
Right.
get over time. That's why it just isn't something that would happen in 6 months and it's all up and running. We need to get these components, and you might get one component up and running in 6 months. And a lot of things are also the data quality is going through, and like I said before, a build out, doing a build out analysis is not the process that takes time. It's making sure all the data coming in is clean and correct. The land use, the codes, and all of that. That's what takes the time on any of these.
So is that, I really like that as one of your goals for things to operationally, functionally accomplish this year. Is it reflected in the budget? Or do we really think that it'll be handled with existing staff supplemented by grants?
Yeah, I kind of would say that would be existing, and also this is something you can also have interns work when they have some downtime, is to start working on some files. Sometimes there's some special programs where you can get people that specialize in this. Even I know at the county we used to get people in that were special employees that were looking on training for adapting to the workforce, and sometimes we can maybe look to tap into these people that give them a set skill to go through and pull out these certain documents out of a file and to thin things down. We'd used them many times before, so.
And that's that transition, that project. Let's just think about, because big picture, we want to do this in all the departments.
Yeah.
But if we just do department, building department was last year, planning department can be up next. The clerk will figure out her stuff, and we'll be supportive of that in each department. So let's just looking at the planning, is that 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, part-time employee? What are we talking about?
I'd have to look at the quantity of files. I actually have just kind of know where some of the file cabinets, I mean, our planning got put up into building department. I have files that are integrated through that office. So I don't have a real good visual of the actual quantity. I'm still putting files together for that were in different areas. So I don't have a good sense of the quantity and the time frame.
So to echo Mayor Garrity's question, we see there's a line for interns, but I remember in years before that we've asked, is this enough money for the interns if we really want to take a stab at making this one particular focus? That is my question, and I don't know if that was actually answered.
Is there enough money for the potential amount of interns to do the prospective amount of work in all these different areas?
We're very supportive of the goal.
Yeah,
We want that to happen. We want to give you what you need to make it a success.
Right. I mean, as far as interns, I mean, you're probably going to get most of the interns like a college intern from, in my past experience, when you have them, they're supposedly available, but then they want to leave 2 weeks early for their family vacation. So you never get them full time for the full period. So I think we could get several interns. Another thing is the space in which we have to work is like, I can't take a huge number of interns because we just don't have space in the building, in the department between Joe and I. There's just not a place for them to sit.
I have full faith that there are college students who could handle this. I remember doing a very similar type of job when I was 19 years old for a summer job, and I did a whole audit of this weird little thing, and I still remember it. And I didn't leave early to go on vacation. I stayed as long as I was supposed to stay. And so you may get some very good people to do that. But if this is a bigger project than that, and you're going to be hiring part-time staff, if it needs to be in the budget, I'd rather put it in the budget now, because it's still not an astronomical number. And I wanted to make sure that you have what you need to make it happen.
What we did last year was we basically allocated money for seasonal. We hired people in 4 months
Right.
full-time in the season of the summer.
Right.
And we hired, say, 2 or 3 people at a time so that we can move the process along quickly. And, they were happy because they were making somewhat of like a summer salary.
Yeah.
But they were accomplishing a lot quickly. So we were able to get all building permits, certificate of occupancies, and had them all scanned and entered into the computer system. So, I mean, I would hope the board has seen that, since we had that problem with foils and searches taking forever, are now happening in a day, just by doing that process.
Yeah, we want to say that about every department, and if planning is next, we want to make that happen. So tell us what you need.
Because I remember.
So if you were going to do it, let's say it's a comparable size job. I mean, it's the same size village. I don't know if there's that much more with building or that much more with planning. But how many staff, seasonal staff, would be allocated for that project?
We at that time, we had at one point three people working at the same time. We started at the beginning of the summer, and 2 of them had to leave, because they were going back to school. But then we had one other person who stood in the fall, and we made it in one more 4-month seasonal. So by the time we got to the end of the year, we had everything up to date. So we took about, say, 6-7 months.
6 months.
And that was putting up files that were going back to the 1940s to current. We had quite a big
I'm talking about for
amount of files to do.
Yeah. So what does that translate to
Yeah.
for if we're putting aside human resources to cover that type, that magnitude? If we're going to, I don't know if they're really comparable, but they're
Part-time
not
seasonal.
totally dissimilar. So, so we're talking about 3 part-timers for the summer, and then 4 more months on top of that or
So the
something.
budget has 2 part-time planning interns already in it?
Now, is a planning intern the same as a seasonal worker, financially?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what an intern, if, we're not talking about somebody who gets credit or $1,000
DPW, I think, had
stipend.
2 people doing scanning last year, didn't they?
And those are paid interns, right? So 2
During-
paid
during
interns
the
at
summer,
any time of the
they
year.
had,
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so this is
So-
a
It's a paid position, but we
$15
have
an
in
hour
the-
job,
So
Yeah.
that's
For
what
the
they're
summer.
without affiliation with the school. Okay.
for 32 weeks.
15,
15, right.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I might apply for that.
But actually, this summer, the Department of Public Works had 2 seasonal people, and they were using one of our offices to upload a lot of their documents too. So we usually budget for seasonal during the summer. The Parks and Rec does, Department of Public Works, we did last year, so.
Okay, so you're saying that everything that we've just been suggesting is already in the budget, or do we need to increase it?
So for 32 weeks at $15 an hour, 62.40. And there's already a for the interns. It says one will focus on law and zoning, and one will focus on the GIS. Now, I don't know what the whole conversation we just had. I don't know if that's
That was a rollover from last year,
Okay.
that wording.
Okay.
Because if you remember, we hired Max, and he was gonna do part planning and part legal.
Okay.
And he ended up being upstairs and doing
He was
that.
great.
He was wonderful.
Okay.
Love to get him back.
And that's also not counting if you do get the college or high school student for credit that you're not paying, but it's here for credit
Right.
for a semester
We'll
in
use the
addition.
money, we'll use
Yes.
the money this time next year.
Yeah.
Right. But
For all the
Stewart
things.
in his budget has the paralegal, so now he won't need this person that's gonna be doing this, so that money is.
So
gonna
we
be
shifted
out.
over to planning.
Absolutely.
All right. I don't know what the numbers are. I want to see it happen. I want to,
Right.
this time next year, I want you to say, wow, I'm so glad you put the resources in there. That was exactly what we needed. We had great success. Now everybody in the public can experience this in such a better way. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So that's
Okay.
what we're going to get. That's what you just allotted the money for.
You know, I think that the money that we put in here is gonna help us get through where we need to be. Don't forget, the op center is gonna be under construction this year as well, so.
Making excuses already for not
No,
having
I'm
that beautiful
not.
report a year
But
from now.
I think that we would be happy to come back and say, hey, we have this opportunity, would you allocate some fund balance to this? Or, we do have money in a contingency, you know, would you allocate contingency money? Because we want to advance this project, and what we budgeted for, we have other opportunities. I would feel better doing
And I
that.
think I might start immediately looking for grants to support this, too.
Right.
You know, if we can, is to make the money go further, we could use this money as a benefit.
I hear you, and I think that is absolutely something we should be doing more of, and getting tiny grants is that much easier, and just finding the grant and doing the application, I think we probably have a good shot at it. But we're really happy to be making progress in the building department with, that we made that progress, to have that public accessibility and the modernization of records, and I want us to keep that momentum going, and it sounds like you're up next, and so we just want to make it happen.
I'd love it. I'd love to be able to find files better. I'm working, and anytime I have a little time, I am trying to do it myself, is just organize things, you know, so that we can find things, but, you know,
How much of your life do you spend looking for keys? Never mind, files in the planning department, so, all right, thank you.
Hello, Joe.
Good afternoon.
Good news.
Oh, well, we finally hired an assistant building inspector who's been on for
that is good news.
about a week or so. So that was a position, obviously, we had budgeted, but we never were able to get filled, but we finally did.
Where did this person come from?
He was actually a contractor, and he was on the list. He was very eager to get into government
He was on the
inspection.
list, though. Okay.
Yeah, he was on the list. And,
This
you know,
is his first municipal job?
right. But the good thing about that is it allows us to train the person
Bad
to
habits,
what we
yeah.
like. We mold them.
Make all good habits.
Right. So, and so far he's
About his background, though, because that's really important.
right. I mean, he's been a contractor. He had his business for a number of years. He's gotten to the point where I'd like to change to do something in government and building department. So he was very motivated. He's also a volunteer fireman, I believe, in Thornwood or Hawthorne. So he has a lot of knowledge about fire safety and stuff. So You know, I'm excited to the fact that, you know, we have somebody on who's motivated and somebody that we can kind of train to what the goals are of what we're trying to do going forward. So I'm happy about that. We're looking to hire personnel for a third code enforcement officer. Right now we're at 2, but we're budgeted for 3. And the goal is for next year to hire actually a 4th, because code enforcement, we do fire inspections, we do Section 8 inspections, we do obviously all complaints that come in for public complaints, property maintenance, overcrowding, and so forth. Now with the local law 5, we're taking on the responsibility for businesses that are coming in and ones that leave and get replaced with new businesses. So we'd be issuing new certificates, which would cause more inspections to make sure that they're properly zoned for what their business is, what they're proposing. Make sure that they have the proper fire safety in place. So that's going to be another record keeping. Then we part of that law obviously is for vacant properties. So we have to make sure we're starting a program with that where you know, if a building is going to be vacant, to make sure it's properly secured, the water's been turned off, the utilities are off, and who's got responsibility. We have to make sure we have a contact for that person, you know, in the individual or the company that's responsible for the property. So we're not constantly always, you know, trying to track down who's going to take care of it. And then we have to obviously keep records of that and report it every year, which properties are, you know, new come up that became vacant and which ones that were vacant that are now occupied and being, whether they're being bought and remodeled or reoccupied again. So, you know, we feel that getting a 4th person would be important for a lot of reasons. One, for the issues that we have, making sure that we have proper businesses where they're supposed to be, and that people properly, if some of them require having taken permits for work they've done within a business, you know, that they're doing so, and to really enforce the fire inspections, because you know, we don't have a fire inspector. The fire department have volunteered, so we take that upon ourselves to do it, and we'd like to do it with a lot more consistency, especially because New York State has rules on what businesses should be getting inspected yearly and which ones should be inspected, say, residential apartment complexes every 3 years. And for a long time, the village hasn't done that. I mean, there's a lot of properties here that haven't had fire inspections ever. You know, we also pushing in operating permits, which we started last year. Some of the business were on board with it. Some of them never came in and filed their applications properly. So we want to get everyone on board doing that. You know, that's usually for businesses that run what they consider hazardous storage, you know, gasoline stations, mechanic shops, auto body shops, places like Metallized Carbon. They need to get operating permits. So, you know, we feel to be able to properly do this, you know, it's really important to have a 4th code enforcement officer. You know, so that this way we can get the things done that really should be happening in this village. And the village is growing. We have a lot of commercial base. So we like that. And the other issue is we have right now in an office assistant staff, we have 3 full-time people. One of them is actually 50% water department, because we also take on the backflow program for the county. So she's maintaining all those records for water department. But in reality, all the applications for backflow come through our department. So we review all the plans, we send it to the county, we do the inspections when they're installed, we make sure they're doing their yearly tests. And actually, we have a very good rating with the county health department with that. I think we're probably the most compliant municipality in the county. So we really want to take what we have as a person who's right now half part-time and just basically turn them into a full-time person. So the extra half a week worth would be allocating for that individual to take on the record keeping that requires for the additional stuff of Local Law 5. So I think our goal is really just to be a lot more efficient in the way proper inspections and safety are handled.
So we started collecting data, my favorite thing, Do you want to share with him the numbers that we have just for this year?
My eyes are terrible, but.
You want me to read it?
Want to borrow my glasses?
No, so basically, I mean, just to give you an overall, every month we do is get a total of how many complaints, how many building permits, how many orders to remedy, how many court tickets are written. And we were sending that basically to management's office, and Jamie Hoffman actually put it into a spreadsheet so you can see monthly and you know what the yearly totals are. And like for example, just in complaints alone, just called in complaints, we have in this past year up to date about 627.
Wow.
So that's complaints that come in. 62 court appearance tickets issued.
So the inspections, that one was really important, the fire inspection.
Fire inspections, we've actually done 161, and that's not getting to
But we have how
probably,
many
we have
to
a,
do?
literally,
Like
we've,
1,500?
probably about 1,500 between apartment complexes, businesses, you know, mixed-use buildings. There's a lot to be done. And when we do apartment complex, we actually have to inspect every apartment. So you take an apartment complex of 180 apartments, we have to organize to inspect 180 apartments. That's one building.
Are you gonna have to inspect ETPA buildings? I thought that was under the state now.
That I'm not sure. I think we have to, by
Need to look into
state
that.
law,
We're
we're supposed to inspect
for
all of
that.
them.
But we have, I think, 10,000 properties, and that's only,
Yep.
1,500.
My understanding is that when it comes to like buildings and codes, that's still the municipal,
I think,
you know,
I
the
think it
municipality.
I think
They
you have to look at it, because that would be great to take that off his list.
is. Right.
No, I think
That would
it's,
be a
no,
huge
I
advantage.
think that's one of the disadvantages. It's state regulations, local resources.
Really?
Right.
jurisdiction, what it's called, right? Yeah.
Yes, so what else you
Well,
got there?
no, it's
'Cause
their
the-
jurisdiction, but we have to do
That's
the
too
work.
bad.
We've actually written up a total of, says here at the end, she total up 925 orders to remedy or violation notices were issued. With, at this time, at the maximum three individuals. So
I'm sorry, what was that?
three code enforcement
Oh,
officers
three
that
code
we had
enforcement
that have
officers. I thought you-
nine,
I thought you meant property owners.
925
Okay, yes, okay.
925
I know we have some
violations.
repeat customers, but not that many, okay.
And how many are closed out of that? So year to date?
Some are pending in court. They
Okay.
become court appearance tickets. Some people just comply and we close them out.
Is that most? Like, do most comply? And I mean, you don't have to like, but you know, we get a lot of phone calls or you know issues about stuff that receives an OTR, and it'd be good for people to know or us to know that you know the majority of them are addressed or
Yeah, I mean,
resolved.
a lot of the people do resolve the issues when you bring 'em, whether it's a matter of you know legalizing something that was constructed that they didn't take permits or you know
mean, it's
some of the complaints that come in you know they get violations for could be like a broken sewer line and then
or like as simple
repair
as
it.
garbage, right? Or like
Or
something
some
in
of
their
it is-
property,
is
right? Or
garbage,
like,
and we're doing the sanitation tickets. We hand out sanitation tickets. So those would be part of like a violation that was issued, but then they, you know, it'll get cleaned up. But I think the sanitation tickets, the purpose to them is really to make, you know, the system we had by the state rules is we'd have to hand somebody a notice to remedy and give them an allotted time of like so many number of days, 30 days. You know, garbage out on the wrong day is not going to stay out there 30 days. So at some point, the Department of Public Works picks it up, and then the violation goes away, and the homeowner never, you know, was never penalized for it. Next week, we do this again. So with the sanitation tickets, the person's getting a violation and a ticket right at the moment. So it's like getting a parking ticket. So it's gotten a lot better. So they're not violating sanitation rules as much.
Could you tell me how you define a complaint? You had hundreds of them. So what do you tick off a sheet that says it's a complaint?
Well, any complaint that gets called in, some people call them in, some people send them in through emails that actually come to me. So I'll get them at any time of the day, weekends, nights.
So are those unique individuals, or are those an individual calls you twice? is two complaints, or is that one complaint?
No, it can be where a person has called in a complaint and it's been entered, and then, you know, a violation was issued, and then, you know, a couple of weeks later, they call again, and we'll enter the complaint in again and issue a second one. You know, people calling complaints about their management company, their landlord, you know, and we've written out a violation to them, and they haven't,
It's like a case, right? Every time somebody
every
calls
time it
you,
goes in.
Could
Yep.
be the same person, could be the same
That's
issue,
fine.
could
They-
be different issues. I got a call.
Any complaint
1A,
that comes in,
second
they, even
call.
if it's anonymous, we get it, we put it in the system and look into it. Every one of them. Like building permit applications, we took in 409 building permits up to date applications. We issued 276 certificate of occupancies. Actually the permit reports, we did 791. 409 permits actually have been issued at this point. Some are pending because we review a plan and give an architect a revision list that they're missing deficiencies and wait to hear back from them for revisions. Sometimes they get back to us right away. Sometimes they're just pending applications. But I mean, you know, these are numbers of volume that we do. I mean, in the building end, getting an assistant building inspector is going to be, you know, it's a big difference for us, just having a second person. But I think in the code enforcement, because, you know, we have various different types of complaints that come in, and when you include that with, you know, doing proper fire inspections and Section 8 inspections, you know, it may appear, you know, that getting a fourth person on board is, you know, asking for, you know, more than maybe the board was expecting, but I think it's necessary to really enforce properly what needs to be done. And you know, to me, code enforcement, especially in Ossining, is something that really needs to be done properly.
I think the purpose of this exercise was really to provide the data to all of you to show just how busy that department is. And when there are frustrations that things aren't getting done, there really isn't the manpower available to do it as efficiently as we would like. And, you know, I thank Joe for providing that information so that Jamie could put it together, but it's really valuable for all of you to understand just how much comes into that office, and then every time there's a call, there's a response, and every time there's a permit, there's a response, and then there's you know, one permit might generate 5 or 6 inspections, I mean, which is another response. And our staff works 6.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, less 12 holidays. But you know, we're really only looking at about 5,000 hours. So when you start doing the numbers and you start realizing just how long it takes to respond, some things take very little time, others take a lot. But if you look on the average, and then you say, all right, if you really have all of this work to do, if there's an expectation that it's all done as it's supposed to be, then this is what it's going to take manpower-wise. However, if you only want to allocate this, then there has to be a general understanding of what we're not going to pay attention to, because we can't pay attention to everything. And that was really the purpose of the data collection for all of you.
Oh, if you thought you needed to convince me, you did not need to convince me. We have been working for years to be able to have more effective code enforcement. We've done a lot of legislative updates. 2 years ago we did, and we did more this year. And that is all to give your department more tools to be able to effectively enforce codes to improve economic development, to address vacant building properties, to impact safe housing. And so I am very happy for you to hire more code enforcement officers. Unfortunately, that's not always as easy as just putting it on the list. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, the money is in the budget for it. You got my vote for it. I don't know if everybody else agrees. And the office assistant, you're saying you had a half-time person doing planning and a half-time person doing building, and now you want a full-time
No,
person
that
in
was
building?
the director for the department. So, and that was my request, is that there's actually somebody that's managing the code enforcement aspect and the building aspect together, so that it's more efficiently done. So Joe has been doing a yeoman's job. He's just stepped up, and he's been doing both. But when you look at the number of building permits and the inspections that need to be done and all of the reports that have to be done for the building department, separate from all of the task lists that have to happen in the code enforcement, it's just not humanly possible to efficiently do that. So my request was that we hire somebody that can administer that and make sure that everybody's going out and doing the work and following up and keeping them on task.
So that's different than this. You want it to be different than this. This says building inspector oversees assistant building inspector, 4 code enforcement officers.
So if, does
It's
it
narr-
say
it's in the
director of
narrative.
building and?
Nope.
That's the place.
Okay.
That's the way
Right,
it is
but
currently.
So that's not what
really-
you're proposing.
I'm not. I'm proposing that we have a director that actually makes sure that everything is functioning and everything, there's people paying attention to the details. When Joe pulled up how many open permits we have, dating back to 1932, there were quite a few. But when you think about closing out a permit, you have to have somebody that's tasked with making sure that that project is done, following up with the customer. If they're putting up a sign, they have to call you. I mean, again, there's a lot of things. So now we have people that are trying to sell their homes or sell their properties, and they have all these open building permits, and that's really because we haven't had time to close out that stuff or to follow up with those people and say, hey, you've had this for 30 days. And again, that's a function of the software program, if we can make the software program do what we need to do for that.
Right. Municity right now that we're on has, there's some good things to it, but the biggest problems with it is to be able to generate reports is very difficult. We have to go to our representative at Municity and explain to them, we'd like to do a report of such, and then they have to create one to generate something. As opposed to, we want to be able to have a program that, we as a staff can go in and say, I'd like to, get a report of where a status of complaints. It came in as a complaint. It's right now been, reviewed. Person who's responsible for it has entered in their information. It's in the stage of a notice. Something we can make a report to follow up on stuff, and you can't do it without having them kind of explain it to them and them having to generate something. I think, recently I had asked Municity to give me an update of if there was a better version that they had, and I was told basically we're on the best version. So I know Debbie has been looking into other options to see if there's something that can, make our computer programming, a better, more feasible for us to use.
So Debbie, help me, I'm looking here at the planning and building personnel spreadsheet from last night.
Okay?
Planning's going from 2.5 to 3.
Right? Because that was the removal of the half-time administrator.
And then the addition of the
addition of a
GIS
full-time
person that we
GIS,
just
right.
discussed at length.
Yep.
Now, the building department is going from 8.5 to 11.
Right?
Yes.
One of those is,
Office assistant.
That's,
so but the office assistant, or are we adding a whole new person or half a new person, as stupid as that sounds?
that was, the request was for a whole new person. So we'd have one more code enforcement, we'd have one more, it should only go up 2.5.
So we have a.
Should
we
be
have-
2.5, I believe.
we have
Yeah,
a-
building department is
we have a-
2.5. Half director, one code enforcement, and
Right.
one administrative staff.
So what we have in the budget is definitely the
What
code.
are you looking at?
I'm looking at one of six when it says
What section?
this is under the building department.
Okay.
So it says new position. So I'm imagining when you say new position proposed, it wasn't in last year's budget. Is it safe to assume that?
Page
Chief
1?
building official, director of code enforcement was in there last year at half.
Okay.
The
Okay.
other
I
half
am
was in
not
the
seeing
plan.
that. What page are you on?
One of 6.
One of 6,
One
okay.
of 6, second line up from the bottom.
So, new position, oh, so there's
So
three
the
new
chief
positions
building
here.
official was in last year's budget at 50% in the building department. And 50 in the.
So, hold
plan.
on, okay, so the first, no, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. New position proposed, building department, code enforcement officer. That I understand, $60,000. We need a new code enforcement officer. That would be the fourth building.
That would be the
code
fourth one,
enforcement.
yes.
That I understand, there's one. Director of planning and buildings.
That's been taken out. Because
Okay,
there's
so-
no,
No, That's the chief building official.
Right, but
No,
it-
no,
No,
because
no,
it
no.
says
Before that.
recommended 0, so that is
Zero.
not in here.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the next thing
Oh,
is,
yeah.
new proposed position, building department, chief building official / director of code enforcement, $102,000 for that person. That's, you're recommending that person that Joe and everybody else in the building department will report to.
Correct.
And their job will be, you were kind of explaining it, but it also kind of sounded like you were just, they were sort of tracking the work that everybody's doing.
They would be managing the department. So what they would be doing is making sure that all of the plans were being processed properly, and helping with that as well, because we really want somebody that is a certified building inspector as well, so that they can also fill in with that and do code enforcement. But they would be, what's the word I want? They'd be making sure that everything is flowing and it's moving along.
Can we hire a consultant to do that?
No, to me, that almost sounds like a really, really good executive assistant.
Well,
You're talking
somebody
about
has to have
your
authority to tell the code enforcement officers that this is where they need to go and this is what they need to be doing and following up. And then when there's a problem on a code enforcement issue, that person can go there and troubleshoot that problem with them. So what happens now is Joe is here doing his building inspector duties, and then the code enforcement officers, he has to direct where they're going and what they're doing, and then when they have an issue, he gets pulled away from his building inspector job to go do the code enforcement job. So if we had somebody that oversaw all of that and managed it properly, it's like having an engineer in the DPW. You've got somebody that's at the top and is making sure everything is getting done. I don't know how else to explain it.
I agree that we want this department to run more efficiently. I'm just not,
There's enough to do for building inspector for them to look at the plans, do the inspections, do the follow-ups, do the COs. That's 2 people doing just that duty. And then you have 4 code enforcement officers that are making sure that they're doing all the code enforcement that we want them to do.
right now, we've been working with 3 or fewer code enforcement officers.
Right, and 1 building inspector.
And 1 building inspector. So we're talking about doubling the number of people qualified to do the building inspector work and increasing by, 25 to 30% the number of code enforcement officers. I'd
We
kind of
have
like
more
to.
jobs to do now.
We do, but I'd kind of like to see, that's a lot of growth of personnel in the department to begin with. I'm not sure that I'm keen on hiring a director of code enforcement as well, when we're already increasing the department by 50% in the inspection and 25 to 30% in the code enforcement at the
So
same
who's gonna
time.
manage all that?
Who's been managing to this point?
Well, Joe has, but then, we're having conversations about what code enforcement things are not getting accomplished and what, and the delays in buildings and permits and, COs and all that. So again, it's going back to the numbers, and we don't have the people to be of quality service to our community. And now, we've added more tasks for the department to do. So we can't do what we need to do now with just the limited amount of people that we have. That's why we're asking for the expansion, but
Yeah.
then somebody has to manage all of that.
And I guess it also goes back to, for me, we have struggled to be able to hire for the positions that should be easy to hire for. And if we just hired an assistant building inspector, fantastic, it took us like a year to do that. We want to hire 1 or 2 more code enforcement officers,
So we actually have those people lined up.
great. Let's get them on board, and if we're then saying, at some point, we're gonna hire somebody who's gonna tell all of you folks what to do, basically we're saying to Joe, you've been doing this, but we're gonna take that power away from you because we're about to put somebody in that position whenever we get the county to agree to allow us to have that position, and then we interview people for that position. And maybe by this time next year, we'll have put somebody in that position, like we just announced we got an assistant building inspector. I just feel like
That's a
Apartments-
personnel issue that we should talk
it's,
about.
okay,
Personnel.
okay.
Agreed with that. I would just say I would like to know how we plan on going forward as far as the definition of leadership and management, and whether it's a part-time job, full-time job, what's the original position, just understanding that. But that's all.
So haven't we always had a director of code enforcement?
No, we had one.
How
Before
long
that,
he
it was
here?
something else, right? What was it before it
It
was
was
Al?
before the building inspector. That position was created to replace the building inspector and have the director of code enforcement to act as a building inspector. And if you look at the definitions and the description for director of code enforcement, it's pretty much the same as building inspector. Just keep in mind, last year, the board needed to modify some language into the code because it was making reference to the director of code enforcement, which at that time we did not have, and we need to put that information into power so the building inspector
We
had to do
broadened
that.
the language,
So-
yeah.
Correct.
Did you want to,
Yeah, I
clarifying, or
it's
did you want to
just,
say? Oh.
there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure I don't want to regret saying what what I could say. So
We can
I'm
talk
I have
offline
to-
if you want.
No, which is fine because some of the descriptions and stuff like that, like that the planner, assistant planner, director of development and planning. Debbie and I had a conversation last year, and director of code enforcement wasn't even near in that conversation. The director of code enforcement that you just presented now, it was actually that conversation that you and I had was the director of planning and development supposed to be in charge of the planning department, building department, and director and code enforcement. So it's kind of surprising to see, and it goes back to the topic from last night, it goes back to the topic of this morning, that there's not clear direction in what that means. Not only that, but just a side note, you put in something on a budget, and I get the reasons why you want to do that, but under our personnel and the jobs postings that our village has now is a position called Director of Code Enforcement already. So if the board hasn't approved that position, you're already expecting to, just like it's still the position of assistant building inspector is there, paralegal still there. I'm not sure if that was filled or not, but if the assistant building inspector was filled, I don't think we shouldn't have that there. That should have been taken out. Literally, I just had a screenshot of this morning of that. So I just think that you guys, village management, needs to figure it out exactly the structure of the departments. To me, if you look at other municipalities, we always compare ourselves. I don't want to say Peekskill because it's a city, but a lot of stuff very similar to that. Postchester itself, a little bit of Greenboro in a way, but I have never, and I could be wrong, but I have never seen a director of code enforcement actually be in charge of the building inspector. Even when we had at some point, if you go back to history, we did have a building inspector, an assistant building inspector, and a director of code enforcement, but it was never one on top of the other, or was never like a pyramid. So I just think that you guys need to figure it out exactly what that means and then bring it up to the board, because without that, it's more like putting more people into something that there's no structural. There's nothing to work with, and we're going to be here for another year and nothing's going to happen. We're still going to be in the same issue. So
Thanks, man.
I won't beat a dead horse. Trustee-elect Casada and Mayor Garrity, I share their sentiments. Before we, similar to the earlier conversation that we had with the planning department, before we authorize $102,000 for a position, we just need better clarity, because the thing about when we hire people, they don't go away, they stay here. Then there's the employee benefits. Then there's the New York State retirement. So that doesn't happen now, but eventually, before we pass the budget on December 5th, I think I can speak for most of the board members that we really need some clarity.
Busy Tuesday night.
Oh man, was it third meeting? You wanna go Wednesday? Thanksgiving Eve?
So these are asks, but they're not in the budget, right?
No, this isn't the budget.
Thanksgiving Eve.
Oh, it's in there. Okay.
Oh, oh, Jesus. So we meet on Saturday?
Tuesday, the 20th? You leave for Thanksgiving? 2 days before?
Saturday? Oh, do I work Saturday?
And I won't be
Oh,
back
God.
until late Monday.
Okay, well, why don't we finish up with planning and
Why
building, and then
don't
we'll
we do that?
revisit
So
our
these
our
asks
calendars.
that you have are not in the budget because you're asking for them.
No, they're in
Oh,
the
they're in the budget, right? Yeah.
So all of these numbers are in the budget that you came in.
Yeah.
with. Okay.
So the building inspector position was in the 2018 budget. So that's why she felt authorized to be able to post it. It's
You rolled it over, right? Yeah.
You're talking about the director of,
the director of code enforcement.
was in 2018.
Was in 2018.
Okay.
It was never filled.
Okay.
And it was in 2 spots.
Yeah, and it was kind of
Moved it to
split,
one.
yeah.
Right, but-
So that's a new title, though.
It's a, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a
We're
county
back to the
title.
same conversation we have to have at personnel,
Yeah.
which is boxes, titles, we heard 218, 219, they look different. I don't get it because you call it the same, but they're not quite doing the same thing. This one was supposed to report to that one, but that, I mean, really, we need to have a personnel, which is why I think we should just table all the personnel conversation. But I'm glad to hear that it's in the budget already, like this, all of these recommendations. It was hard for me to go through all of that, which is why I already came in here in a mood of like, what the hell's going on? So this clarifies it, but I think a lot of this, to be helpful, is about right sizing, right? This isn't about what Portchester does, that helps us. What is the right size to get work done, right? It's all about right sizing organizations and who does what with who. Top heavy on directors, but no workers, not good. Lots of workers, but without a manager, no good. You know, I've got community center's gonna come in after this and that, and you said it, and when we started this, or last night, at one of those points, where are you gonna move things around? Right now, we're very siloed, right? Everybody's walking in here and they may or may not know what they're, but I think it's hard, but these titles, even more confusing to this conversation. I mean, I'm just gonna point that out because I don't see the end game to it. I think we're moving along. It's just that I thought we were gonna have a shorter conversation this year. We were thinking Monday is like, now I'm working while basting my turkey. I mean, I'm really, I'm seeing that on the
Lost your weekend from
horizon.
the sounds of it.
No, but I mean, I know it sounds negative. This is not a negative conversation, but it does feel like, when do you need a manager? When you have 1 person, 3 people, 5 people? When do you start needing a manager to manage not only the people, but the projects, right? And when do you need a manager? I feel like I'm on like a screen here. I'm sorry, I can't sit this long. So your question of who's gonna manage all this? So it's projects and people, but it's about right sizing. Arguably, you could say if we had 20 people, we still won't get all this work done that Joe was describing, but we can't afford 20 people.
Yeah.
So that's the conversation at the end, but, I mean, we're all on the same wavelength, right?
Yep. Okay.
Great.
So,
That's up, man.
So when you guys talk about that, because I'm probably not going to be there, just for the
thank
board
you
to
for
keep
setting
in
that up.
mind that if the board does pass this law, not this law, but part of the budget where you do put one additional code enforcement for next year, something that we always had residents come in and with concerns and things of that nature is like a lot of the violations happen at night. A lot of the violations happen on the weekends. And prior to this, we used to have a code enforcement to work from Tuesday to Saturdays.
Yeah, I hear where
So-
you're going. Weekends and evenings.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
You're right.
again, that's something that we have gone through in the past and is not anything to do with the contract, with the CSEA contract or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It's more like how do we manage the schedule wise. So just keep that in mind. If it does go through, this is the opportunity for us to manage, for
Thank
the
you for
board to
reminding
manage
us
that
of that.
out.
Maybe Debbie remembered that. I hadn't been thinking about it. Yeah,
No,
it's
I
important.
knew that, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Are we, are Tracy and Joe?
I just have one last thing.
Wasn't that easy, right?
The intern budget for 6240. At 32 weeks, it approximately comes out to 13 hours a week. So you're gonna have 2 people split 13 hours a week, or
No, it's 32 hours.
I'm just looking at the numbers. So 6240.
Wait, where was it?
So if I do 13 times 15, that's 195. Times 32 comes to 6240. So are you splitting 2 people, or is each person getting 6240?
Well, it could be either or, can't it? Like,
Where are you at?
That's depending who they hire and,
You're
right?
saying
I
that
mean,
there's not enough money in the intern budget.
Basically,
Okay, so we should double it.
that's what I'm saying.
Well, again, we're saying, can we have one intern now?
So one
Again,
intern.
because
You're budgeting for
we have
one.
this
For one intern,
big
okay.
project going on where things are gonna be moving around, and the intern would be really great
Okay.
for each of them for
and
that.
that's still in addition to the seasonal.
No.
No,
No.
that is the
That is
season.
No, okay, that's
is
fine. I
it.
just wanna, because the words,
Right.
words matter.
All right.
So, don't
Okay.
forget, we also have to manage the intern.
Yeah.
So you have to
three.
oversee them, give them their projects, making sure they're doing their projects
Right,
right, so.
and actually, that's why it's sometimes easier to do like what the building department did, which is have
Right.
the
Here's a
same
project.
project for multiple people, so you have the same
Yep.
instructions,
Yep.
I'm done.
and, you know, that's easier than everybody has their own little
Right.
activity.
Right.
So if
Not
we-
running summer camp for
so,
20-year-olds.
cool. So if we just strike out that S and new,
page are you on?
and 7 of 11 and say new position, and then just
that it?
scratch out 2 and say part-time planning intern,
I don't have a 7
Then-
and 11.
What
Are you in the
section?
planning department?
yes.
Oh,
And we just change out that wording, then then we won't have to worry about that.
gotcha.
It'd be one position.
Because we would want them to just work on a project.
Okay. And just
Yeah.
one. So, yeah. I just
Right.
want to be clear. We're just doing one, we're doing one.
So these were part-time, so it was, yeah,
2 part-time
Yeah.
interns,
versus 1 full-time.
one
Or
full-time.
one part-time. I would imagine you would have one person doing
Well, no,
13
15 hours times,
Do you really care though?
yeah,
Do you
I
really
mean,
care to sit and talk about, rather than just say, here's your budget, go get 5 for this, or go get
Right,
2?
right.
I mean, your point is always, not my job, you guys have to
Right.
figure out,
Okay.
right?
You want to know what, but your
important
question,
part
but
of
you
it,
started off by saying, is this adequate? And Debbie's saying,
Absolutely.
this is all that I'm
Right.
that I'm
Yeah,
comfortable
that's
putting
all
in
I'm
the
saying.
budget.
Right.
But
I'm
we,
just-
what we are hoping is that come April or whenever, you're going to come back to us and say, you know what, we understand what we want the interns to do. We're going to
Right.
be looking to hire 2 of them or 3 of them. We're going to have them do this project June, July, and August. And so the 6240 is now becoming 11,000.
Right.
Plus a grant that we got, or whatever it is, like that. And we're going to
Argu-
take it out of contingency because we didn't do this or that.
Arguably, at the end, when we get into personnel, in my opinion, speaking only for me, I rather just tell you, you have X for interns for the village, and I'd like to make sure that we get some high school in there, I'd like to make sure we
Right.
get minorities, I'd like to make sure, like, I'd like you to try for this. If you want to put 5 in one department, or 7 in another, or 2 here, or 1 by your desk, for me, it's real, I don't know if I really, but we do want to have a sense.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And we have clearly identified that
Yeah,
we're
everybody should
very
identify.
supportive of the
Yeah.
planning department becoming modernized and
Yay.
scanned and.
Right.
And there is money in the manager's line for interns as well. That's
No, I put it in a bunch also, so I don't know.
Well, there's
where-
some in your budget too, and some in my budget,
Well, that's a different issue, yeah.
because we have to move it around.
Okay.
All right.
But I mean, right? I mean,
But
that's
we're
what you're
good.
going
Yeah, I
with.
mean,
Okay.
think we're
again,
good.
I just know it said 2 people, and I was like,
Yeah, no.
the numbers don't.
Get it.
don't add up.
Okay.
Really?
Talking about fees. Are you guys talking about going to go talk about fees or
No,
no?
Not today.
not today.
Okay,
We moved fees to whenever the
Got
heck,
it.
I don't know.
that's what I want to
You
talk
may have been
about.
out, you may have been out
Okay, probably.
before we had to,
Okay.
because we're
No,
running
good.
behind.
But is the planning
Planning and billing
personnel
is done.
going to be here for that? Because that's the majority of the questions that I have.
Oh. Well, ask your questions then. This is
So,
the planning
and-
time.
Again, and some of that stuff is going to be related to the building department as well. Because it's a big
Ask your
impact
questions,
on
we'll
the-
see if we
Yeah, that's
can
fine.
pull
I can
into
ask the
this
questions and then
conversation.
you guys can
Yeah, yeah.
answer.
See if this
So
is
pretty
time.
much, so last year, someone came in, long story short,
Oh,
you know, I know you go.
I know where this is going. Go
exactly.
ahead.
So,
Ask
and
it.
Debbie knows as well. And I had a brief conversation with Tracy, I believe. I'm not sure if she recalls it or not. But anyway, our planning fees, our planning department fees, including the zoning department and architectural, haven't changed. What has changed is the practice and how do we do this and who's doing the notices or not. So last year that was denied. I was part of the board at that time. It was unanimous. Something happened at the beginning of the year. Now we go back to, because now an application is here, it's $300. So an applicant comes in $300 and they have to pay an additional maybe $150 to $200 depending on what the mailing of the certified letters have to be.
give me more than that.
So that's what I'm saying. An average minimum of depending on
They
how
might be
big of
going
the
in front of
radius is.
multiple boards.
So again, so now we look, if when you guys look at the fees next week, Those are the questions that I want to have. Why, and are we comparing this to other municipalities, and what the other municipalities charge for a planning fee, either architectural or zoning? So if we're not changing here, because I don't see anything in the recommended regarding to the planning, so those are big things, and especially if you're going to keep this way, we want to make sure, again, because I didn't see any notice to the community saying we are changing our procedures and how we do things. So we need to do that. We need to communicate changes that happen on the fees to the community. The other one that I saw and the changing of the proposed fees is, how do you charge the building department? Now we go to square footage, and what does that mean? What is the average square foot, building construction? I spoke briefly with a building inspector. Give me a couple examples. I just don't think that's the right way to go about this. He showed me some samples of some municipalities, they do that. I just don't think that should be something that we should be going to. It just makes no sense because they're going by the average square footage of construction. And for residential, it could be, I can get a contractor to do the work for $125. I can get a contractor to do the work for $300. And if you're charging $150 or whatever that case may be, it's like, what are we doing? And what are we doing for a high-end commercial space? So it's not really appropriate for you to look at it that way. But again, show me some samples, show me some data, get some information from other municipalities and when that change happened and how does that could move forward and, But if you guys
Does
not
it
going to
have
talk
to
about
happen?
fees, but that's something that, I'm going to bring it up again, and those are related again to the planning department, to the building department.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wasn't paying attention to it, and it is relevant. I do want to have the staff here to be able to discuss it, just,
But just thinking about fees, we are allowed to change fees at any time during the law, correct?
we are
mean,
allowed to change fees, but there's a proposed change, and
Yeah.
I don't understand where it comes from or what's the justification for it.
Gotcha.
It
So I don't want to change it unless it makes sense.
It was basically, Debbie and I had a discussion that right now our system is an applicant comes in and it's charged based on their estimated cost of construction. So it's kind of on the honor system. A person comes in and says, yeah, I'm putting an addition on the house and it's $20,000. Then later at the end, so we charged them, the fee right now is like $12 per thousand, so they get 12 times 20. And in the end, they'll fill out a final cost affidavit and we'll say, what was the actual cost? $22,000. But they may have spent $100,000. So we would never be able to verify what the real cost is. It's based on just somebody's honor system of them telling us what they're really paying for something. And a lot of times they'll come in and say, well, I did the work by myself, so that's why it was so low. Other than asking them to bring in every receipt of every product they purchased and every subcontractor that they hired, which would be we'd have to do the accounting of all of that. The idea is to make sure that the village was getting what was considered a proper permit fee to cover, especially the cost of, what to operate, was to basically set a price and tell them whether you're doing the work yourself or you're getting a contractor, this is what we charge for the fee.
Let me understand, let me just try and walk through what this would be, because if we're doing it just on square footage, so permit fee, this is what's proposed, is $1.50 per square foot of construction, which is based on 1% of the total cost of construction estimated at $150 per square foot. Now, that average, I guess, $150 per square foot, somebody, if you need to get a permit to put on a deck, which I don't know, do you need to get a permit? You do need to get a building permit to
Yep.
put on a deck.
Put on a new deck, yeah.
To put on a new deck, that's very different than putting in a high-end kitchen. So right now, if you're putting in a high-end kitchen, it could be smaller square footage than the deck that your neighbor's putting in, but you're going to pay a much higher building permit fee. Now, these fees should be based on something. So they really should be based on how much work is it for us to follow through with making sure that they're doing it properly, right? So is it, based on this, we're saying the amount of work that our staff has to put in to processing the building permit and inspecting the building, the work so that the permit can be closed out is primarily driven by the amount of square footage of work that's being done, not by the expense of the work that's being done. That's what you're proposing.
Right, we looked up to see what was the average cost of construction in this region, based on somebody doing, say, an addition or alterations on their home or a brand-new home. And it was determined that the average cost was about 150. Some are more, some are less, depending, obviously how high-end you're going to build. But that was based on a regional cost of average construction. But I understand where you're coming from. The cost of building a new home per square footage is going to be different than building a deck. Your cost on building a deck per square feet is not going to be the same. But it was just a general idea, rather than breaking down every type of aspect of what requires a building permit. And the other fees that you see here are just like things that we would take building permits for, but they're really like mechanical installations, so we set a one-set price. Because you wouldn't charge a square foot for somebody because they changed a boiler. So we just made a template cost of, this is what your permit fee is for, putting in a new fireplace or a pool or a generator, as opposed to square footage.
And all of those are new mechanical permits?
Well, we always took permits, but again, it was based on a person's estimated cost. So somebody would come in and say, you're somebody who tells me I bought a very high efficient boiler and I paid $10,000 for it is paying more money for a permit fee than somebody who bought a boiler for $5,000. And this way, it doesn't matter the type or model of a boiler you put in, you're just going to pay this one fee.
Because it's the same amount of work for you, whether
Right.
you bought a high-end or a crappy.
I didn't think it would be fair that somebody's buying a better efficiency boiler and because they're spending so much money on paying for one, that they should pay a bigger permit fee.
But what we want, going back to something that Omar said earlier, is we want to have the fees reflective of the burden that it is on our staff. That's where
Right.
these should be derived from.
Right.
So I'm trying to understand if we're getting,
So the basis of it was to alleviate that, not to have people paying more for a permit fee than somebody else just because they bought a better product than someone else and it cost them more money. Because in the end, like you said, we're doing the same inspection, the same work, putting the same information in the computer. The only issue was how we dealt with people who put in permits where they're doing alterations, additions, new homes. It's right now the way the procedure is that it's just based on their estimate. And if you look at the estimate and the amount of numbers of permits we take in for the amount of dollars, they don't seem to match. It's like we do a lot of internal work, but the actual permit fee that we get based on that system doesn't really cover the cost.
now let me ask you, if somebody's putting in a house or an addition to their house, they'll pay the way this is proposed, they'll pay $1.50 per square foot of whatever the addition is that they're taking out the permit on. Will they also likely be having other permits for mechanical permits or? No, I guess that's it, right?
Right. I mean, if they're putting in a new house.
Plumbing and heating, so then they're gonna have, so then, if they're putting in an addition that includes a new bathroom, they'll also have another $100 fee for fixtures. And then if they're putting in, they have to do the backflow administration, that's another $100 for.
And that's-
So I'm trying to understand what this means. So the guy putting in the deck doesn't have all that stuff, so it will be cheaper for him.
Right.
Whereas the person adding, 2 bedrooms and a bath on the back of their house, they're gonna pay $1.50 per square foot, plus they're gonna have all these other
Right, because
specific permits.
if you're doing a permit that requires plumbing, the plumber then has to come in and file theirs, so there's
Oh,
a
I-
process for that too.
I get that, yeah, there's a plumbing
So
certification.
he has
hot
he has
water
to
and
bring
stuff.
in his license, we have to issue him a permit, we have to register it. We still have to do an inspection, so.
Now, it's a little hard to follow because we're using a slightly different format, going from 2018 existing to the 2019 recommended. So the big difference would be the building permit going from the dollar amount, $12 per thousand, versus $1.50 per square foot. But then all these mechanical permits are new, all of them?
So
No, it's just the way it's being broken down. There were permits that were always required. It was just that they were paying for these permits based on estimated cost.
As opposed to a flat fee.
You may,
What you're doing, right?
yeah, but you may also, sorry, you may want to also tell them about solar panels installations and stuff like that, because I think that's essential for them to understand.
me?
Because it won't be
Mayor Gary.
it won't fall under the construction
Enough.
very much.
Right.
My flight got changed, so they're flying me in an hour, or else I miss.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna call an Uber and head out to Westchester Airport.
Travel
It's really
safe.
snowing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it
but
really is.
but I really want to. I thank you for looking into what you said about the fee structure.
I was
will-
actually reflecting
I
your
know.
concern,
No,
and
no,
I
no.
totally
I know.
agree with you on
I know.
that,
No.
so-
So I will definitely be watching it, and I'll talk with.
And we're going to talk more about fees. So this conversation is happening now, but it's not being decided now.
Okay, thank you. This was not intended. My flight was at 10 o'clock tonight, but they canceled it, and now it's at 5:19.
Oh, I have a
So,
feeling you better bring a really good book and get
So-
to see at the airport. You are.
but thank you, and I'll brief you guys soon on how it goes.
Good luck.
Excuse me, Joe.
At least
Thank
it'll
you.
be warm.
Thank you.
Well, you have a flight.
Let me see.
Oh, I thought you were
okay.
going to California.
Why aren't you taking a train down?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Hindsight,
Thank you, guys.
2020. Good luck.
I don't even know if the Chinese buses run around.
This is a great intern project, is figuring out these fees, because I think there's quite a bit of complaint about how Austining charges
Yep.
and how many hoops people have to jump through.
Yep.
And that other communities simply don't make them go through. And all the nickel and diming that goes on. I had somebody that refuses to do work for me when he realized I live in Ossining recently because of what he gets put through here. He simply won't do work here anymore. Guy used to live here. So the fees are a piece of that, but it's also, we have to figure out a different formula. At the very least, I'd rather be as bad as the rest of Westchester, but I'd like to be consistent, because people who do work in homes, people who move from other areas here have expectations, and people that open stores here have expectations, and then they find out that they have 12 steps they have to take, and 8 of them have fees, and 4 of them don't. And it's not something that is just symptomatic of one complaint. It is an ongoing issue. So that we have an option. We don't change the fees.
Right.
Because if you change fees now, and 6 months from now, you get somebody who's really great who says, look, here's what 5 other places do, and let's be consistent, and let's not charge fees for half of these things, because it's just not what others do, and whatever. Or we come up with our own formula, but if we change it now, and then change it again 6 months, I mean, this is a perfect, like, whether it's an intern or a thing to look at, not while people are trying to go out and do inspections and do it between and betwixt, like inspections and complaints and court appearances, which is what's happening. I think, that, to your point, it should be looked at and said, this is perfect. You don't have to be on the field to do this. You should also talk to some people, like contractors, and get their point of view of what Chappaqua is doing in other places around the contiguous, Briarcliff, whatever, because they know. And the honor system is, I appreciate the honor system. I just think, I'm not sure how well the honor system works, and I don't know what the solar panel was, but that I've done solar panels, and you know how many times we went through that rendition. Still, I don't think it's closed, because I keep getting the wrong information sent to me. And I live here too, so it's not like a theoretical conversation. We all have stuff. So I don't know. You have to sort of think maybe tonight and say, do I want to recommend changing the fees now? Or do I want to get somebody in to look at them as a topic? Because it's not just fees, right? It's the 12 steps. You do a bathroom, so you got to get your toilet and this. There's different pieces. The deck's the easiest one. So maybe think about it a little bit, but from my perspective, I'm not sure that this is clear.
I just want
than what we
to,
had.
I'm sorry, I just want a clarification. You're saying that all these, the thing that's different here is that normally you've had to get some type of permit for all of these, but because you're going to the $1.50 permit fee per square foot, now we're seeing all this stuff get broken out. Is that mine?
No, because it's electric
No.
is always.
Oh, well, we'll let you speak.
Well, no, you're talking about what you're seeing here for like solar panels, generators, propane tanks. Because all of these were based on one form of filing a permit. You put your estimate, they did the same building permit fee, application, but the fee was always based on your estimated cost. So if you're gonna do an estimated cost by square footage, you don't put a square footage price on a solar panel or on a generator. So if we're going to use the system of telling them your construction cost is in this region a certain amount of money, and this is how your permit fee is going to be allocated to you, then we have to take out anything that doesn't represent square footage, which is going to be like mechanical installation, solar panels, chimney liners. So we just made it a set price.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to this approach. I think there could be a good logic to it. I just, you came to this set of recommendations, and what Rika's saying is somebody should really focus on this and come up with the recommendations that are reflective of a lot of research. Maybe you did that research, but we just didn't know it. We just arrived here, and it's a totally different approach, and we're kind of wrapping our heads around it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we kind of backed into this discussion as opposed to having the presentation of this discussion and the philosophy
Right.
behind it up front, which is what I was planning to do for the fee schedule.
Oh, so then we'll
But-
have it at the fee schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
have
just that,
so
it's
present
just
it
that
the way you want
we
to.
won't have all the staff at the fee schedule discussion, and it is valuable to, to talk to the professional staff that's doing it, so that's why it's relevant to be, have the clerk here when we do hers, and the building department, he's here, so.
We were just looking at simplicity, ease for the customer. Again, that connection with the customer, I think, is really relevant here. And taking out the
Calculations.
honor system.
Well, the honor system is
Yeah.
is just,
Yeah.
it's
It's a
also,
flat fee.
the
It's
honor
a flat
system's
fee.
not fair
Everybody
to.
knows what it is. And I think that Joe did a really good job of looking at, what are the things that we can just charge $150 for? It's a flat fee. Everybody knows what it is. You don't have to worry about how much you paid for it. I mean, there's a lot, I think it's really more for the customer's benefit and the staff's benefit when they're trying to calculate what these fees are. And
But you
there were
still
some other
have the
things.
pieces.
If you're doing a full building, brand new building, you get one fee, and it's going to include everything. So it's,
But you're not. I mean, it's usually I'm adding a bathroom and some window, and so that isn't, I mean, realistically, what happens around here is piecemeal. It's not.
Yeah, I'm a little,
building a house.
I'm a little more concerned about being cognizant of the experience of the small property owner and the
Sure.
local
I mean, that's
guy
where
than,
Sure. most of
we're,
it.
we're not as concerned about Avalon and Ginsburg being
yeah,
able to
we
figure
did-
out the process and handle it financially.
right, and we didn't want to have a special certificate of occupancy fee when that should be part of the permit fee. It's like. I mean,
So that's a fee that we
thought
took
about
out?
this. Well, I mean, that's part of the philosophy behind all of this. I mean, we really did believe that this is kind of a new concept, and we weren't really sure that you would want to move in this direction, but I think that we really needed to broach a different approach to how we do this and take out some of the anomalies that happen and just make it customer-friendly as well as, staff efficient. And then we can.
We can continue.
I
in
do
the
want to
fees.
move on this. Is
No,
there
no, no,
one last thing
and
you
again,
had?
no, which
Yeah,
is
let's
fine.
do it on fees.
But just keep in mind also, there are some new items on the proposed fees. One
Yeah.
of them being a roof fee that we haven't had. And the New York State building code itself does not require for you to have a building permit. You don't need to have a building permit to replace your roof unless you replace a structural. So keep in mind that there are stuff.
I thought we already went through that a couple years ago.
The-
If there's not a
correct.
structural change,
So,
then you don't need a permit.
exactly. So now some additional fees are being proposed that we have to keep, the board has to keep that in mind as well. So again, there's another meeting for you guys to look into it. So, yes.
And besides, this is all public, Manny, so if you want to highlight and send an email in, just highlight where you're like.
I'll be
I
here
don't-
next
you know,
week.
Just give us an email with where you think the differences are.
Thank you.
And and you're right, all fees we could change later as well, right?
So the roads are getting worse,
really getting worse. bad.
I might leave my car here and get a ride home by somebody who's got better vehicle.
Yeah, I don't even know if mine makes.
But can we say goodnight to Tracy and Joe so that they can get home
Thank
before
you.
the roads